Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be talking about some potential future reworks that Riot is going to make. The thing is that Rev 3 has actually officially announced a new updated list about the upcoming reworks. The first thing to mention is that he actually removed certain champions. The likes of Kennen, Kog'Maw, and Amumu from the previous list of planned reworks are now off the list, completely booted out, and they now seem to have no future plans for reworks. It kind of makes sense because the new champions they're a little bit more in need of some reworks. Now quickly before I get into the official post, I know I'm delaying you guys here a little, but I promise this one's pretty interesting. Quinn is not actually on the official post, but a Rioter commented that she's someone who's really being looked at, and I mean this is great because she's in a very odd spot as kind of like an assassin ADC that's now really just played up in the top lane, and hopefully in future reworks they will put a lot more emphasis on Valor, which I think is the overall goal for Riot, so only time will tell, but I think she'll be interesting. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into the list. I ordered these in what I personally believe goes from champions that need the least rework to the champions that need the most rework, but you guys can agree or disagree in the comments down below. So first up we have good old Pantheon. His original rework was actually a part of the Diver class update that was supposedly going to happen alongside Irelia's rework and many others. It did however get cancelled, and he's been a strong contender for a full rework ever since. I mean, we can talk about several things like his ultimate, which is very iconic, but his point and click style of gameplay is pretty boring and lackluster to say the very least. Now, I know a lot of people love Pantheon and a lot of people hate him, but he is starting to feel dated compared to some of the new champions. Now, I think Riot will retain his ultimate as well as his spear and stun, but maybe in different ways. Maybe bashing a champion in the face with your shield could stun them in like a cone style, and his spear could maybe become a skill shot like Nidalee. I am no analyst, I am no predictor, but I think it could be kind of cool because we want to, well, I know Riot will want to remain his badass Spartan feel throughout his kit. Pantheon himself has an amazing setup as a crazy fighter in the top lane, and I'm sure Riot will base his new kit around that concept heavily. I think it's important to just quickly note that Riot always looks for a couple key factors while reworking a champion. The first one is if they can create a rework up to the standards they desire. The next one is how much room is there for improvement, and the last one is how much does the community really want it. All these three things are always factored in before they make the actual rework itself. Moving forward, we have Corki at number 9. Corki mains are really the only ones playing him at the moment, which isn't a bad thing, but he's lost a lot of his agency ever since the major change that had him fighting over being an ADC and being a mid laner. This amazingly themed pilot has went pretty downhill since then. Riot's rework would most likely heavily focus on him being a pilot, of course, and I definitely see them putting more emphasis on his rockets and flight mechanic. Of course, I'm not too sure, but during the marksman update when where we see his care packages and that whole mechanic being implemented, I think it really did push a unique mechanic that fits his theme, which is very important. I definitely want to see what Riot will do with this rework, and I want to see how they will change his kit to more better force him back into the lane that he should be as an ADC. While there isn't heavy community outcry, and while his room for improvement lacks compared to older champions, he definitely hits the mark for Riot wanting to rework him up to the standards that they may have missed in the first rework. Moving forward, we have a very controversial champion. I have to try to stay on topic here because we have Chogath. Now, I want to be honest with you guys, I am a little bit biased here because I absolutely hate this champion. I'm not kidding. I am one of those guys who will ban Chogath every game because I don't like him. He's kind of a special one to me. He's a walking tank with the ability to utterly burst huge amounts of true damage, and it's definitely an interesting design that Riot took with him a very long time ago. Now, by no means can anyone really call him overpowered because he holds up okay for being a beta champion, but he just has a raw tank and raw damage with not much else in place in terms of heavy presence within the game. that makes him very stale. I mean, the Terror of the Void is really awesome looking, and there's no denying that he has huge claws, and he's one of the coolest looking monsters that you could play in League of Legends style-wise, and his overall theme is set up perfectly, but expressed with a very lifeless kit. His Scream is pretty thematic, but boring. His ultimate, where he completely eats another champion, dealing true damage, fits this monster theme perfectly, but it stacks up becoming stronger than it should be, but then everything else in his kit kind of lacks, so it should be strong, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of growth and room for improvement for this guy, so I really wonder what Riot will do. Moving forward, we have Shyvana, the most hated and loved dragon in the game. Shyvana is a unique character with a unique niche, but her passive is generally underwhelming and her abilities are straight up boring, at least in my opinion. The entire theme is built around her being a dragon bloodline, but securing 4 different elemental dragon only rewards you with 25 bonus armor and magic resist. It's kind of weird. Not really worth it, nor really interesting considering her awesome theme. I believe that reworking Shyvana would mean building her kit from the ground up to further emphasize her dragon-themed abilities. Someone like Nidalee or Elise is effectively perfect because they can switch between the forms constantly, and I wonder if they could take that route with Shyvana. I'm not too sure, to be honest, but I think she does fit all 3 categories. I've seen a lot of people want a Shyvana rework, and it's perfectly complemented with the room of improvement around her whole kit, and I believe Riot can really rework her up to the standards they've set. Now let's talk about good old Volibear. Volley. I think this one might be a controversial one, just as much as Chogath, in terms of him being a sensitive champion who's super loved or super hated. The thing is that he's strong under the right circumstances, but his kit is pretty anti-fun to play and play against. The biggest problem is that his theme is so underplayed, maybe the most underplayed in the entire game. He is a badass lightning themed bear that has a lot of possibilities and could be a lot cooler than his auto attacks that give us a very half-hearted electric effect. Hopefully we'll just see his theme really shine after his rework, and that's where we could see some massive improvements. Someone else who suffers very similarly is Udyr. He was actually supposed to be reworked back during the Juggernaut update but got cancelled. He's now returning for a rework, and he has the same idea of being a little bit anti-fun to play and play against. Let me be honest with you guys, theme-wise, he is the coolest thing in the game, at least in my opinion. I would go as far as say that each ability will probably remain a form even after the rework, but there's just a lot of potential of making each form a lot more unique from a gameplay perspective. I mean, Udyr could literally spit out abilities based upon each animal that they set. I hope Riot really takes advantage of this. Instead of the base stat benefits that are very boring, I hope they make his stances play a much bigger role. Taking us into the darkness, we have Nocturne. He is one of the better champions that exist in terms of the perfect setup for a rework. He definitely has a lot of room for improvement. He's truly an awesome themed champion who I personally think doesn't have his theme fully expressed through his kit. Now his badass ultimate really expresses this perfectly, don't get me wrong, but apart from that, there's a lot more to rework to his kit, and I definitely wonder what Riot is going to end up doing with Nocturne. Next up we have Shaco, which personally I think is kind of weird. I didn't expect to see him on this list, but after really thinking about it, kind of makes sense. He's had multiple reworks for him cancelled more than once, and that kind of goes to show that Riot really hasn't figured out what they want to do with him yet, and this was a similar issue that they actually had with Urgot. I personally don't think he is in too bad of a spot myself, and I think his uniqueness of his kit is still retained as well as his theme. I think the last update did put him in a very weird AP-AD hybrid spot. I know we basically still build him AD, and it was pretty undesired and sort of hurt his overall gameplay. Shaco is really meant to play with the opponent's head as he utilizes everything in his kit. I actually believe that most of his abilities will remain intact over the rework, but maybe function a little bit different, and I definitely expect the ratios and scalings to have some minor or maybe even major changes. I think Riot is close to hitting the mark, but maybe just hasn't hit the bullseye yet. Now we have a champion from the beta that has never ever received a gameplay update. This is none other than Dr. Mundo himself. He happens to be the only champion from the beta who has never got an update and whose gameplay is really sketch, especially compared to the rest of the champions. I mean, champions like Lux and Morgana, who didn't receive any major updates since the beta, really stand to test time compared to Dr. Mundo, who simply just does not. He has a great design lore-wise and theme-wise, with a lot of potential, but is very hindered by a simple and extremely outdated design. I could definitely see a lot cooler abilities and even a more intuitive rework on his cleavers, as well as completely new abilities all around. I definitely think something like his cleavers will definitely remain, but something like Burning Agony or, you know, his ultimate and stuff like that are very boring and will completely have reworks due to the lack of player interaction that they create. Now, last but not least, by far the most needed rework might just have to be Fiddlesticks. He's probably just the most deserving of an update just because of how much of an odd spot he's been in and has been for a long time. Someone like Mundo is super outdated, but at least we know we take him top, play him top, and you know, can still win in the top lane. But Fiddlesticks, originally meaning to be a jungler, has had a very weird migrate to the support role, kind of. Most people don't really know what they're doing with him or where to play him. We've seen him mid. I don't know. I think there's an enormous room for improvement on him. Fiddlesticks is a fun champion, but has a very basic and boring theme design of simply being a scarecrow and not much else developed around him. His lore is very lackluster and there's a lot that Riot could rework. Now, in my opinion, they will more than likely change his lifestealing, or at least how it's implemented into his kit, as simply just standing there draining isn't a very fun mechanic to play or play against. Riot may even take the opportunity to make him more of a prominent mage, as his theme and changes to his kit could easily set him up for that. Oh, that was a very long video. I don't actually know exactly how long. Anyways, while you're down there, let me know what you guys think about the rework, and let me know which one you're excited for the most. For me, it's Udyr. I'm telling you, hands down, it could be one of the greatest reworks of all time, and I hope Riot does it. Anyways, I love hearing your guys' opinion more than I like hearing my own. I'll keep an eye on the comments down below, subscribe for some future content, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.